Hello, welcome to Recovery Demystified, a show where we explore our relationship to substances from a radical, non-religious, and empowering lens. Our sobriety is not a purity contract. It is an invitation to become curious about ourselves and find our own unique paths to growth and healing. If you've been questioning the role of alcohol or drugs in your life and haven't found the resources that you need, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome back to Recovery Demystified. My name's Early. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. Today, I've got another recovery resources episode for y'all. This one is going to be part 3 in the 3-part series that starts with Recovery Resources episodes 31 and 32. So if you haven't checked out those yet, I would suggest going and listening to those first, although you can definitely still learn something by listening to this one on its own. Today, we're going to be talking more about learning how to listen to our own inner intuition and the different things that can muddy the water and get us off track when we are learning how to listen to our inner intuition. And why all of this is important is because our intuition is going to lead us towards the things that are going to create the foundation for our own healing in our own lives. There are other recovery programs that tell everyone they all have to do the exact same things to recover from addiction. And I think that that's complete bullshit because we are all different from each other. And so we're all going to need different things to recover from our addictions. And the way to find what things are good for us personally is to learn how to connect to our inner intuition and begin to foster an environment where we can follow that again. But before we get started, just a couple quick announcements. Pretty soon, I'm going to be doing a listener questions episode. So if you want to ask a question, you can send it at info@recoverydemystified.com. And I'll leave that email address down in the show notes. And also, this podcast is listener supported. And if this work is helping you at all and you want to be able to show your appreciation, you can do a few different things like hit the subscribe button or rate us 5 stars and leave a review. All of that stuff is extremely helpful and helps other people who need to hear this message find the podcast. Also, there is a Patreon community and you can join that for as little as $3 a month. There is also a free option on there as well. And you can also donate in any amount via our website, and I'll link that down in the show notes as well. Yeah, and I'm also doing one-on-one recovery coaching work with people now. So if that sounds like something that you need, if you're looking for accountability or a way to implement these skills and personalize them to your own life, there is going to be a link in the show notes to book a free 20-minute strategy call with me. And anyway, what I'm here to talk about today is learning to listen to our inner intuition. So in the past 2 recovery resources episodes, we talked a bit about learning how to recognize the addicted voice in our brains when it's speaking to us, and then like sort of the origins, like scientifically where the addicted voice is coming from. And then we also learned a little bit about recognizing our inner critic and the voice inside of us that is afraid of change, where those voices originate and different ways to work with them to be able to recognize them and break that neurological feedback loop and bring ourselves back into our core selves, which is the part of ourself that wants what's best for us in our lives. And every time we break that neurological feedback loop by recognizing those parts of ourselves for a moment and separating from them and choosing not to believe what they say, we are rewiring our brains with the concept of neuroplasticity. And eventually, as we do that over and over and over, the addicted voice in our brain gets less strong and quiets down, and we strengthen the part of our brain that contains our core personality that is responsible for all of our executive functioning, such as impulse control and future planning and things of that nature. So if you want more details about what I went into talking about all of that stuff, we can go back to the past 2 recovery resources episodes, number 31 and 32. And today I'm going to talk about finding intuition. So I think that intuition is something that is like beat out of us at a very early age. We are taught not to listen to our intuition and instead to like rationalize through everything. And there is this cultural value put on rationalization and logic, and it's almost seen as like woo-woo to learn to listen to our own intuition. And intuition can present itself in a variety of different ways. It can be as a thought, but I think that a lot of times it's a bodily sensation. And this can most commonly be described as like a gut feeling. You know, if somebody's like, oh my gosh, I went in that situation and I just had a gut feeling something bad was going to happen, so I got the fuck out of there. That is a person's intuition. And one of the ways that thoughts are created is in response to bodily sensations. So our brain communicates the needs of our body with us through thoughts. And what happens as a human being in this body, our body will recognize a need of some kind. Say it's like our blood sugar is getting low, and the body will say, okay, low blood sugar. And then it creates a physical sensation in the body. And that will be the feeling of like hunger, or maybe like if your blood sugar is really low, you might feel kind of like shaky and faint. And then after it creates a physical sensation, that is translated in the mind as a thought. And that is your brain trying to say something, say anything to you to try to get you to meet the need of your body. And sometimes, especially in addiction and especially in alcohol addiction, low blood sugar is oftentimes read by the mind as a craving. So it's just important to like, as soon as we have a thought, we can view it, we can step back and we can see it, and just remember that process, that this thought is like the end of the line. And before that is the bodily sensation, and before that is our survival need. And every time we step back and we look at all that stuff, we just get a moment to be able to reflect. And it takes practice to even remember to stop and reflect on thoughts. And it's not possible to do that with every single thought all day long. But this will be one of the practices of learning how to listen to our intuition. Is we get a thought that maybe we think is true, or maybe we think, oh, maybe this isn't true. And can we step back and say, okay, how do I feel in my body about this? And what potentially is my body's need that's not being met right now? Like, what is my unmet survival need? And it's a tough practice because, like I said, we are culturally conditioned to reject thinking about our bodily sensations and reject thinking about our intuition. But really, it's one of our absolute most important life skills. Our survival historically often hinged on being able to make knee-jerk assessments in a moment's notice. And our body is like evolved and designed in this way to communicate things with us via sensations. So a lot of times, like that gut feeling that something was going to go wrong, that's based on a bunch of things that we're perceiving that we don't have time for our brain to sit there and analyze. So we get that really uncomfortable feeling, and it prompts us to action, and hopefully it prompts us to action that is in alignment with our survival. One of the practices that I invite people to try when learning about our intuition, so I think it's really important to begin to view ourselves as a scientist and a test subject in our recovery. I don't like the view of abstinence only or stuffing everything down. Like, you have to quit today, you have to avoid all of your triggers, and you have to like your success is measured by your continuous days of abstaining from a substance. That I think is not helpful, and it creates a ton of like internal friction, and it creates an environment that's ripe for dishonesty, because we learn that our approval hinges on other people's understanding of our abstinence from substances. And if also we're out there just like blanket statement avoiding everything that is difficult for us, then we're never going to be able to learn how to be uncomfortable and grow and change. So I think that, I don't know, a generally unhealthy way of trying to get into addiction recovery. So the invitation, the recovery demystified way, is to look at yourself in life like a scientist and a test subject, and every single thing that we're doing all day long is a data gathering experiment. So we go out into the world, we go into the places that trigger us, we do the things that make us uncomfortable, and sometimes relapses happen, but we use all of that stuff as information, as data about ourselves. And the way that we connect this data gathering mission to learning about our intuition is before we do something, before we try something new, or before we try something old, we ask ourselves, how do I feel in my body? You can also ask yourself, what am I thinking? That's important data too. But I think reconnecting to the wisdom that is inside of the body, how do I feel? So say you got invited out to dinner with some of your friends and they all know you're not drinking and they're supportive of you, but you're worried because you're going to be at a restaurant and bar. So you don't know what your comfort level is going to be there. Other programs would say, don't be friends with people who still drink. Don't go to places that trigger you. I'm saying do everything with caution and use it as a learning experiment about yourself. Obviously, like, you're going to know about your own limits and where you feel safe and where you don't, and don't ever push it too far. But do things that are going to make you a little uncomfortable, like titrate it, start out with something small and grow it from there. But so for this experiment, say you're going out with 3 of your best friends to a restaurant and bar. You quit drinking a month ago and you're just worried about how you're going to feel. So before you go out, you can sit quietly with your body and think about the sensations that are happening. Like, do you feel tightness in your chest? Do you feel a ball in your throat? Do you feel a pit in the bottom of your stomach? Or do you feel butterflies? Do you feel like light and airy? Do you feel warm? Do you feel heavy? And write all of that stuff down. And then also write what you're thinking down. Like, this is data gathering. It's not just like thinking about it. It's writing it down so you can reflect on it. And after that, you can go anyway. And a lot of times our body will give us something like anxiety or fear or nervousness. And it can mean go forth with caution, right? Like, we're a little bit worried, but go forth with caution. And then there can be those things that are like absolute gut feelings that are like, this is a terrible fucking idea. But that's going to be different for everyone. How your body shows you that is going to be different than the person next to you. And it's about experimenting and learning. So you're going to go to the restaurant and bar anyway with your friends. I mean, obviously, like, it's important to communicate with people where you're at and how they can best support you. And if at that point you're at the restaurant and bar and you still have the same feelings in your body, we're assessing for that. And if the feelings have changed, we're assessing for that as well. We're taking notes. And then afterwards is where the real bread and butter of this experiment is. How do you feel when you're done? Do you feel calm and warm and like nourished by seeing your friends and eating food? Do you feel like you just had a lion chasing you for an hour? Do you feel numb? How do you feel afterwards? And when the feeling before you went and the feeling after you went are in alignment with each other, that is an example of probably your intuition. And that is how you can learn your bodily signals and your thought process when trying to find your own intuition. And if how you feel before and how you feel after are completely disjointed and like polar opposites, that can suggest potentially a different force at play. For instance, if you were thinking about drinking alcohol, right? And you get really excited and you get like a big dopamine rush and you get just like really fluttery and you just can't wait. And your thoughts are like, ooh, this is going to be great. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to go drink. It's going to be different this time. And it's just nothing bad's going to happen. And then you go, and while you are drinking, you're like, oh, I just feel dizzy and kind of depressed and I feel regret and my body feels heavy and I feel like a depression. And then after you're done drinking, you feel like profound shame and regret, and your body is in pain and your body is sick. That is going to suggest an experiment of not listening to intuition, because the before and the after are so disjointed from one another. They're complete opposites. And this stuff, it's like, it's very different for everyone, and it is completely nuanced because we all have such different internal landscapes. But the invitation here is to collect data, do it anyway, do the thing you're thinking of doing anyway, and then see how you feel afterwards. Unless, of course, like, logic has shown that it's a terrible fucking idea and you don't want to do it. Like, if you get the impulse to drink, I mean, you can still ask yourself, how do I feel in my body when I have the impulse to drink? And if you know in your gut with your intuition that that is a terrible fucking idea, don't go through with it, you know? But as far as like social experiments with getting back out there in the world, with trying new things, with being around people, trying to figure out who's good for you to be around and who's bad for you to be around, and who's, I mean, everyone's going to be in a gray area, but who is more or less good for you to be around. This is going to be an experience where your body is going to be an amazing teacher for you. And I used to teach that and just kind of leave it at that. But the more I talk about it, the more I realize that there are so many things that can muddy the water with trying to find our intuition. I just have had such a robust practice at listening to my intuition that I can now be like, ask myself a question and just sort of get a really immediate and clear answer. And I'm really freaking grateful for that. But in talking with folks about listening to intuition, I've had feedback that has been absolutely amazing. I have one friend who suffered a lot from religious indoctrination and people trying to convince her that she can like listen to God, like Christian God, and then she tried really hard to listen to Christian God and like couldn't hear the words, and then has like trauma from not being able to like do the God thing right or whatever. And that like really has made it extremely difficult for her to be able to connect to trying to listen to her inner intuition, because the water is so muddy with that religious indoctrination and that concept of trying to listen to God, that it just makes it like much, much, much more complicated for her to try to connect to her intuition. And then obviously really frustrating if it doesn't work, because there is that trauma of the religious indoctrination. And yeah, I'm just saying, like, learning to listen to intuition, it's not something that just happens overnight, and it's not easy, but it's a practice that once you develop it and work on it and hone it in over time, it's going to be completely invaluable. Like, it's going to be an absolutely amazing resource for you to be able to get on a path that's good for you and avoid a lot of like destructive pitfalls in recovery. And a couple of other things that really muddy the water when trying to find our intuition are trauma and oppression. So I've learned this about myself actually when I was teaching the intuition practice. When I first started doing our support groups, I realized that I had this traumatized little child part inside of me that would not let me enjoy any sort of afterglow from having a good support group. So it didn't matter how many people showed up, how engaged they were, how much it seemed like it was benefiting folks. Every time I left a support group, my body would feel scared. I would feel sort of fight or flighty, and a voice inside my head would say, oh, well, they liked it this week, but actually secretly they didn't, and no one's going to show up next week because no one likes you. And that went on and on for literally like a year before that inner child part of me realized that, in fact, people do enjoy the support group and they are going to keep coming back, and there's never going to be a week when no one shows up. And also, it's not a survey on me, you know, it's about the group. It doesn't have to do with me. So the trauma of personally my like pretty intense childhood social rejection still plays itself out when I'm trying to do things that follow my intuition. And those are things that like we just have to learn about ourselves and be able to keep an eye out. And I mean, I'm really grateful that all of those difficult feelings that I was getting after leaving support groups, that I never engaged enough with them to listen to them, because sometimes we do need the logic. You know, human brains also have logic for a reason, and curiosity and judgment cannot coexist. So in those times where you also have a feeling like, no, doing the support groups is a good idea and everyone is not secretly hating me behind my back, like at those times we can use curiosity and explore like, where is this thought coming from and could it be rooted in trauma? If something seems really disjointed and nonsensical like that, just getting curious and digging into it is the invitation here. And then the third thing that can muddy the water when we're trying to learn about our intuition is oppression. So a lot of people from historically marginalized groups are going to, against their own better judgment, internalize the views of themselves that are projected onto us by society. And I'm talking about queer folks, people of color, disabled people, working class and poor people, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyone from a historically marginalized community may be internal and probably is internalizing the negative views that are projected onto them culturally. And this is also going to affect our ability to listen to our inner intuition, because that cultural conditioning is really, really loud. And it's going to tell you things like, you don't belong here, you don't deserve this. It sounds a lot like the inner critic. I mean, the inner critic is built out of every mean thing that anyone's ever said to you, which includes cultural conditioning and individual relationships. So yeah, there's going to be times where we're going to have to ask ourselves like, oh, is this difficult feeling coming from cultural conditioning and marginalization and oppression? And a little bit of curiosity and empathy with ourselves is going to go a long way in the muddy waters there. And one like really concrete skill I like to talk about is asking ourselves, what is the result of holding this belief? So if you're questioning like, oh my gosh, is this feeling my intuition? Is this feeling trauma? Is this feeling oppression? Is this feeling the religious indoctrination? Like what am I actually going through? You can ask yourself, you don't have to get to the bottom of it and figure out exactly where everything came from, but you can ask yourself, what is the result of me holding this belief? And that is going to be a pretty good litmus test on whether or not you can just choose to let go of that thought, be gracious for its presence, but let go of that thought. And like, for instance, with me with the support group, right? When I would leave the support group and that traumatized inner child part of me would say like, well, they actually all hated you and no one's going to come back next week. If I latched onto that, what would be the result of me holding that belief that everyone hated me and no one was coming back next week? If I held onto that belief and didn't question it, I would have canceled the support groups and decided to not have this nonprofit organization. This podcast wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing one-on-one coaching. And everyone that Recovery Demystified has been able to support for the past year and a half would not have had that type of support. So the result of me holding that belief was bad. And I just think that that's like a pretty good like litmus test as to whether or not something is going to be generally beneficial. Because sometimes it's like we can sit there and try to figure out like, oh, is this true? Is that true? I'm like doing the curiosity practice. I'm trying to listen to my body. I'm trying to figure out where this is coming from. And it's all just getting more complicated and more confusing. And I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. At that point, it's okay to like step back from the process and just like take a moment, because sometimes there like isn't a clear answer and we're just fucking doing our best. One of my friends recently said to me, you know, we all have trauma and we're all doing our best. And Yeah, so sometimes it's like we're not going to be able to get to the root of something, and that's not the expectation, and that's like sort of too high of a standard to keep in general. And the invitation is for the curiosity to try to be compassionate and gentle with ourselves. And then if we get stuck and we just the fuck cannot figure out if this is our intuition or if it even fucking matters, just take a step back and say, what is the result of my holding this belief? And your answer to that question is going to tell you everything. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. I feel like connecting to our intuition is really important work, and it's something that society is just consistently trying to beat out of us so we can be more obedient workers or whatever the fuck. So consider it active radical resistance work to listen to your own intuition. Consider it whatever you want. And if you hate everything I have to say, then consider that too. I don't claim to be right. I just am telling you about the things that I think are good ideas. And the whole point of Recovery Demystified is that whatever is a good idea for you is a good idea for you. And what works for me might not necessarily work for other people. And I just really want to foster a safe environment for people to be able to explore this within themselves and find what you need to recover and find what you need to build like a really strong, beautiful, nourishing life for yourself outside of some like cookie cutter program that may not apply to your life. So I guess all that being said, it's really lovely to speak with y'all today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the way out. And of course, if any of this stuff resonates with you and you're interested in applying it personally in your own life, I'd be super happy to schedule a free 20-minute strategy call to talk about recovery coaching with y'all. All right, dears. If you're having a hard time today and you're really fucking going through it, I just want to say that I see you and you can do it. You're doing fucking amazing work. Don't stop. And you're going to get to where you want to be very soon. All right. I love you, dears. May you be happy and free. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Recovery Demystified. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend or rate and review us so we can reach a larger audience. Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Petet made our logo. Our beautiful theme music is by Logan Bragg. And our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. We are entirely supported by your generous donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. You can find a link to donate in the description. May you be happy and free, dear listener.